What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 7 top 35 running back rankings, splitting these guys up into different tiers. If you enjoy the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. But let's just dive right into tier 1. And I mean, like, the top tier at running back is just so strong this year. We have 3 different running backs that are averaging at least 24 PPR points per game, and that's just going to be my tier 1. Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor. And shout out to Bijan, man, coming off the Monday night game, 238 yards from scrimmage. He's top 3 in rushing and receiving yards, and he's already had his bye week, so he's played 5 games. A lot of the other top dudes have already played 6. Bijan's a monster, so is CMC, so is Jonathan Taylor. Those are my tier 1 options. Now moving into tier 2, going to start it off with Josh Jacobs, and he has been a monster in back-to-back games, 31 plus PPR points per game. They are feeding him. He's getting into the end zone. He is going to continue to be a lock in your lineup. Then I have Jahmyr Gibbs, who is coming off a very underwhelming week 6, only 7.5 PPR points. I think this is a nice opportunity to bounce back here. The Lions continue to obviously be projected super well in terms of implied points. They're first this week. The Bucs historically have been really tough against the run. Hasn't really been the case this year. Jahmyr Gibbs still a locked and loaded running back 1. Then I'm going to go with Devon Achane going up against the Browns. Now, this is a tough matchup. The Browns are allowing the second fewest points per game to the running back position, but Devon Achane has just been ultra consistent, 16 plus PPR points in every single game this season. And even when he struggled to produce on the ground, that's when he gets it done through the air. He's a really strong pass catching running back. I still like Devon Achane here in tier 2. And then the last guy in this tier is going to be Javonte Williams going up against the Commanders. Now, he's coming off a pretty rough week 6. It was his worst fantasy game of the season, but his usage is still really strong. He's averaging 20 opportunities per game. He's going to be playing on one of the best offenses in the NFL. Still a really strong start at running back. Now, moving into a pretty large tier 3, these are like our back-end running back 1s to higher-end RB2s. I'm going to start it off with Kyren Williams. He's just been pretty consistent. He's the running back 10 in points per game. Seen a little bit of an uptick in the receiving production in the last few games, which is good to see. I think he's always going to be in like this back-end RB1, high-end running back 2 range. Then I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley going up against the Vikings, and he's just been underwhelming to start off the year, averaging 14.9 points per game, only averaging 3.4 yards per carry. And this overall Eagles offense has kind of been struggling, but it's also just like the explosives haven't been there for Saquon Barkley. He's not ripping off the 40, 50, 60-yard touchdown runs that it seemed like he was doing pretty much every single week last year. So that's somewhat of an issue. Until we start to see some like real high ceiling games, it's going to be tough to rank him any higher than like the RB7, 8, 9 range when you drafted him to be a high-end running back 1 with RB1 overall upside. After Saquon, I'm going to go with Rachaad White going up against the Lions, and this is not a great matchup. The Lions are bottom 6 in points per game allowed to the running back position, but with Bucky Irving out, which is what I'm assuming obviously for this video, the Buccaneers are just going out and they are feeding Rachaad White. He is averaging 19 opportunities per game in the 2 games without Bucky, and he's put up 23.1 and 17.6 PPR points. Also, you just have all the injuries to the wide receiver room, like their top 4 wideouts are down. I think you can also count on a little bit more receiving production out of Rachaad White, who certainly has that in his skill set. Then at running back 11, going to go with Ashton Genty going up against the Chiefs. The Raiders have the second lowest implied point total this week. That's not ideal, but in the last 3 games, we've just seen really strong usage for Genty, averaging 19.3 carries and 4.3 targets per game. Talented running back, might not have the same touchdown upside as some of the other guys in this tier, but still someone who I think belongs as like a back-end RB1 play. Then I'm going to go with a guy that we saw in Monday Night Football, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He has a really nice matchup here against the Cowboys, and he's coming off a game with just really, really strong usage. Despite losing a fumble kind of early in that game, he still took 75% of the running back opportunities. He took 17 of the 19 total carries, and he had kind of been in this like gross split with Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez. It looked like he was kind of breaking out of that in week 5. And then we saw C-Rod just completely like out of the mix here. He only took 1 snap, so he's no longer splitting those early downs, with that type of usage, with the matchup they have next week against the Cowboys, I think JCM is a really strong play. Fire up Bill, even though he's not coming off the best week 6 performance. Then I'm going to go with Quinshawn Judkins going up against the Dolphins. And I think he kind of proved in week 6 that he's not quite as game script proof as I thought he might have been. Only 3.6 PPR points. A big part of that was just not getting involved through the air. He had 0 receptions in this game. But now he gets a really nice matchup here against the Dolphins. They're allowing the 6th most points per game to the running back position. The Browns, historically this season have just been really brutal in terms of their projections. They have a fine 21 implied points. That's nothing crazy, but it's a lot better than like the 16, 17, 18 we've seen throughout this season. So it's a good matchup. I think we see Judkins have a bounce back performance. A couple more guys in this tier. The first one is going to be Kamani Vidal. Really coming out of nowhere. You have the injuries to Amarion Hampton, Najee Harris. It looked like he was going to be in some sort of gross split with Hassan Haskins, but he just goes out and kind of takes over this backfield. 76% opportunity share. He makes the most of those opportunities. 18 carries for 124 yards on the ground, 4 targets, 3 receptions for 14 yards and a touchdown. This Chargers offense has looked good. They clearly are fine feeding him. And unless they bring in, legit competition heading into this week, I think he's someone you can start with a lot of confidence. And then also, he does have that receiving skill set. The Chargers, overall target share, they're very concentrated. They're going to target their top 3 wide receivers. Ideally, it's Ladd, QJ Keenan. If QJ's out, you saw Trey Harris step in. They're going to target their top tight end, which at this point is Aronde Gadsden, and then they're going to get the running backs involved. It's like 5 potential dudes that are catching passes in a Justin Herbert-led offense. That is ideal. I like Kamani Vidal here as my running back 14. And then my final player in this tier, someone who I'd like to rank higher, it's just matchup based. It is Cam Scatabo going up against the Broncos. And the reason why I'm maybe a little bit lower on Scatabo than you'd think is that the Giants have the lowest implied point total this week, and then the Broncos are allowing the 4th fewest points per game to the running back position. So Vegas is not projecting the Giants to put up points. Broncos have really done a great job at stopping opposing running backs, but Cam Scatabo's been a monster. In the 4 games as the clear starter, he's averaging 20.6 PPR points, and I do think he has a skill set where maybe he's not going to come out and have a monster game against the Broncos, but he's still someone where in a trailing game script, he can get involved as a pass catcher. He's not just this early down bruiser. He can give you some really solid receiving production, and so I think that could potentially save him here in this matchup against the Broncos. Now, moving into tier 4, actually on the other side of that matchup, we have J.K. Dobbins obviously going up against the Giants. He is coming off really his first complete clunker game of the season. It was always bound to happen given his overall usage and lack of receiving production. If he wasn't getting into the end zone or having an efficient day, it was going to, just be tough to have a super high weekly floor. But I think this is a really nice bounce back opportunity. The Broncos are 7-point favorites. J.K. Dobbins has seen really solid, consistent usage. 14 plus carries, at least on the ground, 14 plus carries in 5 of these 6 games. And so I think game script wise, it's going to be in his favor. I think he's going to have an opportunity to get into the end zone. He's done it in 4 out of 6 games this season. I think we see a bounce back out of Dobbins this week. Then I'm going to go with Breece Hall going up against the Panthers, someone who was just stymied by J.K. Dobbins' Broncos defense last week. He now has a matchup against the Panthers. And over the last year heading into this season, a running back going up against the Panthers was seen as amazing. It was a smash matchup. They just could not stop the run. They really couldn't stop anything. That seems to kind of be shifting because in back-to-back weeks, we have seen these Panthers defense go out and really just shut down 2 solid fantasy running backs on the ground. Javonte Williams this past week, 13 carries for 29 yards, and then Devon Achane the week before, 10 carries for 16 yards. So that's not great. We just saw Breece Hall have a pretty inefficient game on that early Sunday game, but his usage is still really strong, 18.7 opportunities per game. You'd like to see him more involved as a pass catcher. I don't know how in that game where your offense can't get anything going, he doesn't log a single reception. That is a huge issue, but he's still a talented player. The usage is good. I think mid-tier RB2 range is fair. Then at running back 18, I have DeAndre Swift, and this was a big game for Swift on Monday Night Football, not just because it would be nice for him to have a solid fantasy day and he came through, but coming out of the bye week, he had looked really rough. pre-bye. You have Kyle Manunga as like a rookie. Could he get more involved moving forward? Like, there was real risk that DeAndre Swift could start to lose some of his usage in this backfield. And so for him to go out, have 16 touches for 175 yards from scrimmage, that was a big deal. Obviously had the long touchdown reception, but was just consistently picking up chunk runs. And he took 71% of the opportunities. The Bears are solid favorites in this matchup against the Saints. Could be a favorable game script here for DeAndre Swift. He was someone I was concerned about coming out of the bye. I really liked Kyle Manunga as a waiver wire pickup. I still think Manunga is someone who's totally fine to roster, but I feel like you fire up DeAndre Swift as a really nice running back too this week. Then a player that's honestly just super tough to rank. It is Rico Dowdle going up against the Jets. Now, I want to make it clear, in these rankings, I'm ranking Rico Dowdle as if Chuba Hubbard is going to return. I do think Chuba's probably going to be back this week. And there's been talk about like, all right, is Rico now just the starter? Are they going to go back to the guy they're paying in Chuba Hubbard? Like, is he going to step back in and retake that starting role? And my kind of opinion here is I just don't see how Rico Dowdle is not the running back one. It's not like he went out and had a couple of like solid games, rushed for 80 yards, an efficient 80, something like that. This is a guy who has logged 473 yards from scrimmage in the last 2 games. He's put up 32 fantasy points in both of those matchups. And I just don't know how you sit this guy. Like I said, it's not just a couple of like, nice performances. Like, this is historic stuff we are seeing out of Rico Dowdle. And straight up, it's not like Chuba Hubbard had been all that amazing to start off the season. So I still think Chuba's going to be involved, which is why I have Rico Dowdle more as like a mid-tier running back too. But I'd be lying if I said I knew exactly how this usage could shake out. There's a risk that the Panthers are just stubborn and they follow the money, and this is like a 50-50 split. It's also possible that Rico just like retains a lot of his usage and continues to dominate. So I feel like it's kind of just like a gut check for you. If you think Rico is going to continue to dominate, then you fire him up. If not, then maybe you're a little bit more passive with it. I feel like this probably goes without saying, but if Chuba does, remain out, you're obviously firing up Rico Dowdle as a really strong running back one option. I mean, there would be like very few running backs that I would trust more this week over just like riding the hot hand with Rico. I mean, I'd probably just throw him like right in that tier 2 area. He's just been an absolute monster. He's pretty much won them just back-to-back games. So shout out to Rico Dowdle. Cowboys didn't bring him back, signs a pretty cheap contract with the Panthers, and has just been an absolute beast since taking over as the starter. Continuing on with tier 4, can go with Travis Etienne going up against the Rams. Really strong start to the season, kind of struggled in back-to-back games, under 10 PPR points. The rushing attack hasn't been quite as efficient. I will say one positive is that in the last 2 games, he has gotten more involved as a pass catcher, was super just like uninspiring in the receiving game early on in the season, but 9 targets in the last 2 total. That's fine moving forward. I still think he's a solid like running back 2 play. Moving on to running back 21, I'm going with Ramondre Stevenson. Always feels like a gross player to rank, but I actually feel like he has a pretty good runway this week. The Titans are allowing the 7th most points per game to the running back position. The Patriots are 7-point favorites, so potential favorable game script here for these Patriots running backs. And he continues to just be the lead back. He took 56% of the opportunities in week 6. He's the guy that's getting the valuable goal line touches, so he has the touchdown upside. I think running back 21 is pretty fair. At running back 22, I have Jordan Mason going up against the Eagles. Since taking over as the starter, he's averaging 15.5 PPR points per game. Eagles, you think strong defense. They've kind of struggled to stop the run, 7th in points per game allowed to the running back position. Solid back-end RB2. Then I'm going to go with Jaylen Warren going up against the Bengals. And kind of as I expected, we saw Kenneth Gainwell way more involved than he was in the last game that Jaylen Warren was healthy. When Jaylen Warren missed the week 5 game or week 4 game, Kenneth Gainwell had that monster performance. So the split was a lot closer. Warren had 13 opportunities to Gainwell's 12. I think Warren will continue to be the running back 1 option, and this is a solid matchup here. Like, the Bengals are allowing the most points per game to the running back position. The Steelers are 5.5-point favorites. We saw Jaylen Warren get more of the work on the ground, so I think potentially having that leading game script could also shift more in favor of Jaylen Warren if it does play out that way. And then the last guy in this tier is going to be Isaiah Pacheco going up against the Raiders. The Chiefs have the second highest implied point total this week. Game script wise, this looks great for Pacheco. They're 11.5 point favorites against the Raiders. And then we saw him, I wouldn't say pull away, but had better usage, at least a better share of the backfield than we had seen in previous weeks. In week 6, he had a 60% opportunity share. And I'm honestly like debating not even including Brashard Smith in that moving forward, because Brashard Smith is listed as a running back. They just don't use him as a running back. Like, he's just very involved as like a pass catching weapon, but they really give him like little to no work on the ground. So that opportunity share would be even higher if you're taking out, like, I think it was the 3 targets to Brashard Smith. So Pacheco, solid back end running back 2. Now moving into tier 5, this is like the last tier before the running back position just gets really, really gross. I'm going to start it off with David Montgomery, and I do think this could be a better game for Monty. The Bucs are allowing the 9th most points per game to the running back position. The Lions have the highest implied point total. They're 4.5 point favorites, which game script wise could definitely be more in like the, David Montgomery range, as opposed to trailing competitive game scripts where they're going to rely on a lot more Jahmyr Gibbs. But you can just see, like, he's not the running back 1. Jahmyr Gibbs is pretty much going to take that entire first drive. And if the game isn't playing out how you'd like, you could end up with David Montgomery having 4 total carries, which is what we saw in the week 6 game against the Chiefs. Up next, going to go with Alvin Kamara going up against the Bears. It's been an underwhelming season for Kamara, only averaging 11.6 PPR points, not getting into the end zone, only scored 1 touchdown this season. On paper, it is a good matchup. The Bears are allowing, or at least they were allowing heading into the Monday night game, the 2nd most points per game to the running back position. So this could be a potential, kind of bounce back or like boom opportunity here for Alvin Kamara. And then the last guy is going to be Chase Brown. I considered having Chase Brown even a tier lower than this, going up against the Steelers. Kind of some usage concerns in the week 6 game where in like that garbage time kind of late game situation stuff, Samaje Perine was taking a lot of those snaps. Perine ends up having 9 opportunities to 11 for Chase Brown. So that is concerning. I do think this game could be a little bit more competitive against the Steelers, which could lead to some more Chase Brown usage. I also just think like Joe Flacco coming in, he's not going to save this team. He's not going to lead them to the playoffs or anything, but he at least looked like he was running a competent offense, and that is going to be a plus for everyone. Obviously, more so in the favor of the wide receivers, but Chase Brown also will benefit from that. Now we are going to move into the very, very gross tier 6. This is just like ambiguous committee backfields, guys that you certainly don't feel great about firing up into your lineup. And I'm going to start off this tier with Woody Marks. And this might be shocking to some people because the last time we saw him pre-bye in week 5, it looked like a potential smash spot for him. Great matchup on paper going up against the Ravens. He had just had the breakout game in week 4. It looked like he might have been emerging as the running back 1. And he only saw 8 opportunities, and it led to 2.4 PPR points. So he just completely flopped in your lineup. But I do think we could see Woody Marks, start to get back on track here against the Seahawks. First off, from a game script perspective, I think he's going to be the better option in trailing game scripts where he's the guy who has the pass catching upside. Nick Chubb, more of like the early down grinder. And so the Texans are 3.5 point favorites in this matchup against the Seahawks. He could certainly get a game script that he likes. And then also, like, he just had a weird situation in that Ravens game where game script wise, it did favor Nick Chubb, but he was almost penalized for like being moved up the depth chart because in previous weeks, if they were dominating a game, right, and they're done with Nick Chubb, they would then turn to the depth options like Woody Marks. But he had kind of already established himself as like, all right, this is a top 2 running back situation, a 1A, 1B type thing. And so once the game was out of reach, then they're pivoting to like the Damian Pierces. I think Dare Ngumbawale might have gotten some work also. So it wasn't great for that specific week, but it did show that like he is firmly up here, like moving up the depth chart as a clear top 2 running back in this like, crowded top 2 situation here. So in this tier, it's really like pick your poison, but Woody Marks will be my leader here. And then in that same matchup, I'm going back-to-back Seahawks running backs, Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker. I feel like this Zach Charbonnet thing is just like some sick joke that the Seahawks are playing on us. I was someone who, was interested in Charbonnet coming into the season. I've liked him, in previous years. but they just continue to give this man all the valuable opportunities, and he has just been wildly underwhelming. In the most recent matchup, he takes 13 opportunities to Kenneth Walker's 9. He's averaging 2.6 yards per carry on the season, and it seems like they just really hate like some of like the just negative plays that Kenneth Walker can bring them. But Zach Charbonnet is not like infinitely better in that area, and he just has so much less upside as a runner, yet he is still getting all the goal line snaps. He's getting all the third downs, or most of the third downs. He's getting all the 2-minute drill snaps, and it's really just killing Kenneth Walker, and Charbonnet isn't even really benefiting from it with like solid fantasy production because he's just been ultra inefficient and still hasn't really gotten involved as a pass catcher. So I'm still going to rank Charbonnet ahead, but it's gross between these two. And then Kenneth Walker. I mean, you've got this super talented running back, and he's taking 35% of the snaps in week 6 in a leading game script. I mean, that is brutal. If you wanted to rank him lower, I could understand it. I wouldn't push back. It does just feel like at some point, Kenneth Walker is going to get that usage bump. Now, you can't really bank that it's going to be this week, but at some point, it just seems like it has to happen. After those two, I'm going to go with Kareem Hunt going up against the Raiders. Now, his usage was kind of weird in week 6 because he came in with a calf injury, and it definitely seemed like it limited his production or his overall usage. Like, he only had 7 opportunities to Pacheco's 15. In previous games, we had seen those two operating like very close to a 50-50 split, so we could see his usage kind of bounce back up, but after seeing Pacheco like more than double his opportunities, it's tough to have them in a similar range. Then I'm going to go with Bam Knight going up against the Packers, and Bam Knight was getting a big boost from some of the reporters talking about how he was going to be the starter, he was going to go out, he was going to have this solid workload, and he ended up having a fine workload. He did not end up starting the game, which like it's a weird thing to just put your neck out on something like that that's pretty insignificant and then it doesn't end up happening. But he takes 51% of the snaps. He takes 11 of the 21 running back carries. The big thing here is that he took all 4 of the goal line snaps. So you're going to have Michael Carter getting like the third downs, the 2-minute drill stuff, getting more involved as a pass catcher. But Bam Knight is going to be the guy, at least at this point, who's going to have that touchdown upside. You also have Amari DiMercato, who's banged up with an ankle injury. So this is still a gross split here for the Cardinals, but I do think Knight is like the slightly better option at this point. Then I have Travion Henderson going up against the Titans. And honestly, if you would have told me preseason that I would be ranking in week 7 Travion Henderson behind a dude named Bam Knight and Kareem Hunt, I would have been very, very sad. I'm very, very sad about doing it now. But he's just continuing to not break out. He did have like decent usage, 11 opportunities to Ramondre's 14. Like I talked about with Ramondre, it is a good matchup, like 5th in points per game allowed to the running back position, but he just hasn't popped at all. And until we see that, it's going to be tough to rank him any higher than where I have him right now. Then I'm going to go, actually, I'll talk about both of the Titans running backs. This is, I guess, top 37, but I did want to include some of these committee backs. So Tony Pollard, running back 34, Tajay Spears, running back 36. What has me kind of confused about ranking these guys is we had somewhat of a glimpse of the usage in week 6, but now that Brian Callahan has been fired, does that usage completely shake up? Do we go back to more Tony Pollard? Do we get more Tajay Spears? I just don't know. But in week 6, we had seen Tony Pollard's usage really take a hit. He had 26 snaps to Tajay Spears' 36. Pollard 14 routes, Spears 28. Pollard had 10 attempts or 10 carries, 2 targets. Spears had 5 carries, 5 targets. So like just based on that usage, you would think Tajay Spears might be the more valuable guy moving forward. But who knows what happens this week with the usage. Ideally, you don't have to play either of these guys. I think they're both like desperate back-end RB3s. Then at running back 35, I have Nick Chubb. I know he was the better option in week 5 pre-bye, but he is still just like a very low floor, low ceiling option. He's not going to get involved as a pass catcher. You're banking on him getting into the end zone on just a really bad offense overall. Also going up against a very good Seahawks defense. So tough to get too excited about Nick Chubb. And then the last guy here, Chuba Hubbard, has been dealing with a calf injury. Seems like he might have had his chain snatched by Rico Dowdle because Rico's been a monster like I talked about. I don't expect Chuba to step back in to his role that he had pre-injury. But that is going to wrap it up for my top, I guess, 36 running backs. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.